are going to get started now using the slab technique to start creating some art. First thing we're going to do is going to be called the origami bowl. The origami bowl, if you think about what origami is, it's Japanese paper folding. You may have some history of doing this sometime in your life. A lot of times, most of the time, origami starts with a square piece of paper and then gets folded numerous times until it becomes what it is you're shooting to make. In this case, a square is one of the beginning options, but also some other shapes as well. Here's an example of some finished origami bowls. And I'd like to show you a few more here. So the origami bowls are cool because they have a very unique shape to them and all these different edges and points that show up, very unique to this style of building. So hopefully you find something where you really like the look of it and you get to create it now out of clay. Now, to begin this, we're going to start by creating a paper template. And so before we get to making this ceramic origami bowl, like this here, we're going to have a chance to make it out of paper. This allows us to quickly see how things work, see if we like the look of it. Very easy to modify and make changes. And then when it's all done, we can use the paper as a template in order for you to create the ceramic version. Now, I have all sorts of different paper templates that I've gone and made here. So I have some that really stick up like sharp, maybe not as sharp. You definitely get these certain different kind of looks here. You can have it more up and down or more wide open. I also have a few that I've done with a rectangle, and it creates more similar to like if you're going to order a hot dog somewhere and they have it in a little paper bowl for it. And there's also some other shapes too. This was a hexagon that I made that I turned into an origami bowl as well. Some of the bowls are really flat on the bottom, like this one here. So there's a lot of room, think of it more like a plate, whereas some of them have a very small space on the bottom, like this, more like a bowl. So we're going to get started with the paper version first, try out a few different shapes and a few different ways of cutting, and then from there, move it into creating it out of clay. So let's go ahead and turn our paper into some bowls. Now I have some regular printer paper here, same as like how your sketchbook has 8.5 inches by 11 inches tall, same idea. Now you can do origami with rectangles, but as I said in the beginning, most origami actually starts with a square, and so it's just time to turn this rectangle into a square. There's a couple ways to do this. Let's take a look. You maybe already are aware of turning a rectangle into a square just by folding this over so that the edge is even. Take it all the way down to the corner. If I do this, pretty close, off a little bit there. Right here will be where I need to cut. All right, now I have a square piece of paper that's pretty large. What if I want it smaller? With this piece of paper, I'm going to eyeball it. I'm trying to look that this is a pair of lines I can see that they're parallel. Could also use some measuring. I'm going to eyeball this and see how that goes. So if I do that, and then I'll be able to draw along here. Now, as I made the two square sizes, I'll encourage you to start small. Working large has its challenges. One challenge is you have to roll out a slab that's larger than this because you need to be able to have your organic edge that's far larger than the square so you can cut a square out of it. And that can be a challenge for anybody, especially when you get started. So if I go a little smaller, we'll go from there. Now it's time to see some different things I can do with the square. Let's try out a few different ways of cutting and then modify the folding. Now what I'm going to do with the square is I'm going to find different places that I could put cuts on here, and then when I pull the cuts one on top of the other. Okay, now what I'm going to do is cut the paper in certain ways where when I put one piece over the other one, it's going to start to create a bowl shape. So let's try a few different examples and see how it looks. I'm going to try one that's kind of in the middle, kind of eyeballing this, or you can measure it. I'm going to try one that starts on the edge and goes in a little ways, and then it goes in that same amount on every side. Now let me try one where instead of at the middle, I go off to the right or off to the left and go a little ways up and see what happens. So let me try this, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to do it in the same way on every one. So I'm going to pay attention to how far I went over on that one so I can do this one similar. Now measuring, whether you use a ruler or just kind of making a mark on a piece of paper that you can recreate over and over again, will give you very consistent results. Doing it where you're just eyeballing it certainly has room for you to mess something up about it. So just be aware that the neater you want it to be, the more precise you want to be about your measurements. So I could try offset cuts like that. And I could also try cutting it right from corner to corner. So with this one, it's like I would want to connect from corner to corner, draw a little ways in, draw a little ways in. Again, the more space you leave in the middle, the more it's like a plate with a flat spot inside, and the more you go in toward the middle, leaves you a smaller space, so it's going to be more like a bowl. So now I have a few different ways that I'm going to take the square and cut the square, and let's see how they all look. So now with each one of these, I'm able to put one over the other one and see what happens. Now, the more overlapping that happens, the more of a rim that's going to be coming up. Again, I'll say it's more of a plate when you are just a little bit overlapping, and it comes up higher with steeper walls like a bowl if you overlap more. So what I want to do is try something out. Now I'm going to use some tape, and I'm going to tape up a version of each one of these. Now this one right here, long bowl, kind of the hot dog container, I made this by starting with a rectangle and doing just the corners. So these two are very similar. I'd say they're cousins, but one has more of this long boat shape, and that's more of the square shape. So you can try it with different things that way. You could even try out the origami folding, starting with a circle. So you might want to find something around the house, like cups are going to be a little bit too small for what we're doing, but if you found something like a plate, that big a size, or maybe like your globe that you have, you know, everyone has a globe, maybe something like that, that allows you to trace a perfect circle. And then go ahead and cut that out, and we'll experiment with some folding on that too. Okay, figure out where I want to put my lines. One thing that's tricky about this is trying to get it so that if you want evenly spaced lines. And so I'm going to try to do 4. So I'm going to try to get a line that appears to be perpendicular And now I'm going to fold it there. So if I line these up, so I can see my marks from before, if I line those up perfectly, now I'm going to get it broken into quadrants, like that, and now I can put in my lines. I decided I was going to do 2-inch lines and measure these ones. So can you tell what shape this was made from? If you're thinking a triangle, you're right. An equilateral triangle created this cool kind of a bowl. So lots of different shapes you start with, and then all the different ways you can fold them one on top of another. Your goal right now is to come up with a template that you're going to actually use for your first bowl. To do that, you need to make 3 examples that you can take a picture of and put into your portfolio. Hopefully you've had a chance to try out different modifications to have it go steeper or flatter. And then once you've decided on your favorite, then take a picture of that group so that we can see them. Then when we're ready to actually do it, we'll take it apart and we'll use it as a template. Then I'll know exactly how to cut it when it's time. So right now I'm going to keep them together, and I'm going to make a few marks so that I'll know how much I folded it. It would be nice to know how much I folded over when I taped it, so I'm going to do a little bit of drawing on here. You could do it with your pencil. I'll do it with a marker here so it's very obvious. And then I'm going to do the back side as well. That way, later on when I'm ready to make the template, not only will I know where to cut it, but I'll also know where I need to score it. So it really helps us out a ton when it comes down to getting ready to do it on the clay. So there's my paper. Now I know the shape I need to cut, which is a square. I now know where I need to make the cuts, and I'm gonna know the areas that need to be scored later on, so that way when I take one on top of another, I'll be able to cover up the scoring marks, put the slip on there, and have it stay together really well. So it looks like I'm ready to move on to the next step. So that does it for our paper bowls done in the origami style.